welcome. My name is Meepolis, and this is literally graphic. And today we will be talking about a collection of introductions to philosophical thoughts about violence, entitled Portraits of Violence, published in Canada in association with the New Internationalist by the publishing house Between the Lines, which I mistakenly thought was a comic book publisher until someone I know and who almost apparently published with them a couple times was like, no, I don't think they publish any graphic novels. I was like, wait, there's this one. It was just that title, Between the Lines. It just sounds graphic. And they did publish some other stuff. So we were both mistaken. I was perhaps more wrong though. Reading through the entire work this time through, though, I was not terribly surprised that I so easily gave up on this book previously, because the first story in it was kind of a drag. After that, though, I felt like things did generally improve and get more interesting as I went along, so I would definitely encourage people to stick with it if this is something they're interested in. For better or for worse, this first essay was written by one of the two people who were in charge of kind of writing the entire collection. That may have had some effect on the fact that it was a little bit blasé. There may have been more creative reinterpretations or framing for later things because they had to do with previously created work. Fortunately, this was followed up by a second piece, which is based around Hannah Arendt's The Banality of Evil, which some of you may be fairly familiar with. It was a concept that I had heard about previously, where I believe she was in one of the trials for a Nazi, someone who had worked with the Nazi party and was trying to basically get off on the defense that he was just following orders. And so this and kind of all the thoughts around it is you can't just say they were just following orders when you're doing something horrendous. And so it is important to keep in mind the banality of evil, and that it's not always men running around with dark capes and fangs or, Hitler mustaches. The other philosopher ideas covered in this collection, to just read through the table of contents, are Franz Fanon, The Wretched of the Earth, Paolo Freire, The Pedagogy of the Oppressed, Michel Foucault, Society Must Be Defended, Edward Said, Orientalism, Susan Sontag, Regarding the Pains of Others, Noam Chomsky, Manufacturing Consent, Judith Butler, Precarious Lives, Giorgio Agamben, Sovereign Power, Bare Life. Overall, the illustrations were really good and really memorable, and sometimes even work as comic strips. As I've kind of mentioned before when talking about nonfiction comics, even if things don't necessarily fall into hyper-traditionalist comic book forms, I do think that having expressive imagery next to nonfiction text can help people like myself, and who knows how many others, to really build more associations between text and images that help people remember. And there's often a lot of room open for diagramming, which again just helps break things down, makes things more approachable and memorable. And so I'm a big fan, and I definitely think that this was successfully carried out in a couple different varieties of black and white art. The illustrators for this were Inko, Chris Mackenzie, Carl Thompson, Robert Brown, Michiru Murakwa, and Yang Keish. Going back to the philosophers though, if any of these people sound too highfalutin smart and just, they'll just go straight over your head, never fear. I have similar feelings about these people because they are definitely people that come up in conversation all the time. When I'm talking with people I know who are so smart, I'm just I'm sure these people would help me in some way to see the world in a better way or, something, but they just sound so incredibly smart, and sometimes their books are incredibly hard to read, and so it's just I could never do that. But as several very confused reviewers have pointed out on the reviews for this book, it's really not a replacement for actually reading their original works, and it's just kind of introduction 101, which they seem to think is a bit of a bad thing, but I definitely disagree with. I think it is a great introduction in as far as I felt introduced and not actually knowing that much about most of these people. I've definitely heard a lot of these names, a lot of these concepts, but it was nice to have a book to sit down with and have it kind of explain to me what the basic outline of these things are and who these people were. Could just try and force a friend to do this whenever they recommend you read some of these people, but I feel like a book is you're more likely to be successful just having the book, unless you have some very, very nice, very teacherly friends. Violence, what it is, who does it, should they do it, should we do it, is the state violent? Deconstructing and examining our ideas of violence is only becoming more important as time goes by and more shit goes down. It's definitely something I've been thinking about a lot this past year and felt challenged on in good ways, and I've stretched a bit but held strong in other bits. Violence can seem like a very simple concept, but it's definitely a rich one that is worth really digging into. I would highly recommend this book to most people, unless you are a much smarter person than me, which is possible, very possible, and already read these people's original works. So yeah, I think this is definitely a really helpful book. I may actually want to pick it up sometime just to kind of have with me whenever I do end up tackling some of these authors and concepts. Yeah, be exciting. Go out there and learn shit. And as always, Literally Graphic is created on land that should be given back to the traditional landholders, which in this case is, to my knowledge, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, Anishinaabe people, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat Nation.